to the fifth of these insightful conversations about place. These videos are free to access and are aimed at A-level geography students studying the Changing Spaces Making Places unit, although they are available for anyone interested in hearing more about the built environment and listening to different perspectives on how we design, understand and experience the places we spend time. They are part of a project called Your Place Curriculum, funded by the O of Arup Foundation and developed by Placed with support from Our Place. Today, I welcome Dominic Sagar, architect and senior lecturer at Manchester School of Architecture. Before becoming a full-time lecturer, Dominic was a founding partner in Sagar Stevenson Architects, who were key in setting up the community-led Northern Quarter Association, spearheading the regeneration of a derelict and rundown area in Manchester, now famed and loved as the Northern Quarter. So Dominic specialises in urban regeneration, post-industrial cities, and how underground creative industries and communities can act to change the cultural face of a city. How music, the arts, and sport can be a tool for regeneration. I'm so looking forward to hearing more about this in our chat today. So welcome, Dominic. Hello.
Hello to all the people out there and all you lovely students and teachers as well. And I hope you're all coping with the weird and strange times that we've all been going through. And and just to reinforce, you know, how important you lot are and how important doing what you're doing it is really great. And you know, looking at geography and studying the world and the place, because I don't know, I shouldn't go on too much about education, but I think it does need a little bit of a radical change. And I have read that there's a new GCSE coming into place, which I think sounds great. It's about looking at the environment, environmental issues, and I think it's about, I don't really know that much about it, to be honest, but it sounds good, about how organising yourselves and how to do things. And I think, you know, I think that's key to learn. Placemaking, I find it hard to really say what it is, because I think the first place is making a good place in your head. So kind of, where's your head at? Is that the Chemical Brothers? Anyway, is a really important thing. And I've had loads of mental health problems and my family has. So, you know, the first thing to do is sort your heads out. And that's really difficult, especially at the moment, which is kind of why I referred to it. And then I think the next placemaking, which I'll come on to, is actually where you live and the spaces that you're in. And then out into the bigger, wilder world and the built environment. I was listening to, there was a record came on the radio this morning, and I forgot who sings it. Anyway, it's Tonight the Streets Are All Ours. And I thought, that's a good phrase. And I think the streets should be all ours for everybody from all walks of life, genders, non-genders, whatever, you know, that's the important thing.
I mentioned in my intro there about Sagar Stevenson Architects involved in that kind of regeneration of a very rundown area in Manchester, now known as the Northern Quarter. And I'd really love to hear a little bit more about that whole process. Why did you regenerate that area and rebrand it, and who was involved?
It wasn't just me.
How did that happen? Because anyone who's been to Manchester will know the Northern Quarter, and I'd just love to hear the beginnings of that and how it came about.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Are you all sitting uncomfortably? And I'll tell you a story, which is it's never really been fully documented, and I'm supposed to write it up, but we were never very good at documenting things in those days. There wasn't Twitter, there wasn't emails, there wasn't the internet. But I suppose I begin when I was a kid. Tib Street, which is the street in Manchester, was my favourite street. It had 6 pet shops on it. It was a bit mad, a bit crazy, joke shops, all sorts of things. It was Manchester's main shopping area, along with Oldham Street. And then another fine case of how to mess up a place arrived. So the Arndale got built, which is a big, horrible, ugly behemoth of a shopping centre. it actually got blown up, which thank God nobody got killed, but it was quite fortuitous, really. I mean, whoever picked the colour of the tiles
yes,
had
not a
terrible
nice
tasting
looking
colours.
building.
Anyway, so what happened? I mean, it was a terrible time. It was, there was a time when Manchester was devastated, like Liverpool and like a lot of post-industrial cities. No jobs, nothing. All the industry had gone. And as Tony Wilson, I don't know if you know, I'm really interested in music and culture, how it regenerates city. But Tony Wilson, who was the head of Factory Records, said this was our fucking Detroit. Sorry for swearing, but it's a quote. So there was Manchester was laid waste. So the main area of the Northern Quarter got moved to the Arndale Centre and left this kind of dark, decrepit, dank, dingy, dangerous black hole. And I was very upset about it. And I started in, you know, I trained as an architect, but as soon as I was kind of qualified, I went self-employed. I went self-employed before that. And then me and a friend who I'd known since was little, actually, but went to college with, and another friend as well. So you don't know who you're going to live and work with and things, but people who you know now might be really important in your lives, and you might do things. So it's all about, you know, helping each other and working with each other. So we set up a practice in a derelict kind of building. It was dangerous, you know, but we all loved the area, and it's a great allegiance from North Manchester and Coates, which is another story about how that's kind of been regenerated in a different way. But it was Manchester's kind of playground. We organised a meeting in the chip shop, which is now called Night and Day, which is a club. It's a big chip shop, and there's loads of people really upset, really swearing, shouting, you know, what about this, what about that? The city council had forgotten about us. They were spending loads of money and getting grants from London to do up areas where, like Castlefield, where there was just one man and a dog and a scrapyard. We were saying, look, there's people here, there's 40 charities, there's all these artists. We had this space that was free to play in. And eventually a head of steam built, and people started coming to these meetings. You know, a lot of people were really fed up, and you always get the mouthy ones when you're doing a community architecture thing. You always get people who are really angry, but then they start to calm down and go, oh, I see what you're doing now. Oh yeah. And it became great. And it was a kind of, you know, it was kind of a thing. People would come to say, oh yeah, what can we do to help? It actually changed much later on, when kind of, in a way, the city took over it, and it was kind of not what can do to help, it's what can we get out of it, kind of thing. You know, kind of the ethos changed. So eventually the great and the good started coming to these meetings, and the city council came. We weren't funded at all. It was a labour of love, and we were all nearly burning ourselves out on a knife edge. Our businesses were struggling and organising this for free, but the stars were aligned, and we all loved each other, and we had a great time, and we had parties, and we had, you know, we started then doing the Northern Quarter Bugle, and we had these great newspapers, and we had a radio station in the Northern Quarter. We had a big drive-in movie, and at that time I was a bit of a petrol head, still am. I had a big American pickup and dogs, and all my dog, I had 2 dogs who used to always come to work with us, and we had this drive-in. I know you all lot don't know Mrs. Merton, but Mrs. Merton opened this big kind of drive-in in the abandoned car park, and we had all these American cars and watched the Blues Brothers, and it was just great. What else did we do? We had a festival in Stevenson Square, which was the first time it'd ever been closed. We kept arguing for about it being closed. Actually, weirdly, COVID came along, and they've managed to pedestrianise it, and it is pedestrianised, which is quite odd. We had lots of battles with the highways engineers about all the buses down Oldham Street, and the fog, the fumes, and you couldn't do anything. So we started to get things done, and we borrowed spaces and offices. We all went off to Temple Bar, which is I've not got time to go into it, a similar area in Dublin, which now is a bit like Blackpool. You know, it's hen night, stag night kind of places. It was a cutting edge when we went, and we went with Tony Wilson and Richard Lees and Tom Bloxham. They're all sirs now, but they had millions of pounds and a big office with loads of people in it. We had borrowed a shop and just all volunteers, and we had the staff was paid half a week, I think. But then we kind of we got a bit more funding, but it was still pretty bad. You know, people were getting shot still in right opposite where we were, but things were slowly starting to change. People were gravitating to it because it was cheap and there's empty spaces. But, you know, the buildings were all falling down, which upset me. They were held together with dry rot and pigeon poo. So it was upsetting. But the idea was always a place, an enclave to create jobs of independent, like-minded, making a living and doing what they wanted to do rather than working for the corporates and Tesco. So that was the ethos behind it, about jobs and saving the buildings. What we did was a strategic document. So we were appointed with Simpson Architects and some others to do this. It was kind of a guide of what we should do and what should be done, and things about, you know, how to access grants or things like that. So there was a strategy to it in the end. And we were going to do it for, you know, there was a 1-year program, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And we always said we'd last about 7 years, and we did. We all kind of got burnt out. We all got burnt out. I mean, that is a danger with, I won't talk about MUD, who Manchester Urban Diggers. The dangers with community groups is people get burnt out if they're not funded properly, which is why I think the way forward placemaking is funding small community projects and making sure they're actually getting paid would be a better way of spending money than perhaps building the factory museum, which has cost billions and billions of pounds and gone over budget. Those kind of things. But one of the key things was, I mean, really, I found out there was building environmental improvements grants, there was planning grants, building cleaning grants, there was English heritage grants, there was economic development grants, there was European grants, there was living over the shops grants. And we went round and documented every single building and knew who owned it, and we just really through talking, so that when people came to the office, they said, look, I need a shop unit. Well, there's this shop unit, there's a security grant, you can get new shutters on it, there's an art grant, there's this grant. So we actually, I mean, one of the questions is favorite projects is the next question. Maybe I'll come on to that about the Buddhist Centre, which is a classic case of a building. I went out and actually talked to Guinness Trust Housing Association and Northern Counties Housing Association and Riverside Housing Association, which from Liverpool, and they started to buy into it. And so it was, but I only ever worked on social housing because that's what it kind of needed, and at the time it did have it. What is often, I mean, sometimes not the case, but is that people on the ground know where best to spend the money to have the most effect, and they know the things that's missing. You know, like we were amazed once we got some new. Actually, no. We started to get things like new paving, and we got some Christmas lights, which was major victory. But then I was thinking we got some new paving, but also we've been going about the paving on Oldham Street, which was terrible, and there was puddles everywhere, there was crap everywhere, just all breaking up. So, you know, we were saying, well, can we not have some new paving and things? And the highways engineer, oh, you know, no money, blah blah blah. And then about, I don't know, it was about a few months later, they were doing the pavement in Oldham Street, and so we started having these meetings with the city council regularly. We had loads of different meetings. I can't remember all the different names of them, you know, with highways and with cultural whatever and stuff and things, you know, just loads of bloody meetings. And one of them was at the highways and saying, oh, that's great, you're doing the paving on Oldham Street, oh, that's really good. And they were going, oh yeah, and then they said yeah, and it turned out what happened, it was costing them more money in claims of compo, as in from people claiming they tripped up and all the piss heads coming out of the pubs banging their heads. So it's costing about £1 million in compensation claims. So they decided it was actually cheaper to repave it completely. So it was just nothing to do with cultural regeneration. It was just kind of, it was cheapest thing to do. So there was all sorts of weird, mad things like that.
It sounds like there were many people on board, but was there any resistance to this kind of cultural movement that was happening in the area? Or how did people's perception of that place in Manchester change?
No, you're right. I mean, actually, that was one of the key things that we aimed at doing, was changing people's perception of it. We had little artworks, which were ideas of these little markers, and people saw one, the painting or a mural or something or other, and people would say, oh, there's something, oh, there's something else, and before they knew it, they're actually walking in the Northern Quarter, and it's starting to feel different and changing. But it became popular with obviously with younger people and youth culture. Changing the perception was key. but in a way we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, again, it's a bit like the anarchist mantra of just do it and see what happens, which is modified by Nike or whatever it is. And again, it was a factory thing. You just didn't see what happened. I didn't even know the word regeneration or gentrification. We were just kind of pissed off with this. We need to change it. And we're fed up with this. This is an amazing area, beautiful buildings. What's happening? And nobody. I don't even like reading. I never read many architectural theory books. So I didn't know what we were doing. We were just doing it. And see what happened. And looking back on it, we were kind of regenerationists or whatever we are. But I mean, maybe I'll shut up about the Northern Quarter a bit now. But I mean, the aim was that it was before we even knew what 24-hour cities and walkable cities. The aim was you had this kind of area which was independent, full of people not working for the corporate man, caring for each other, loving each other, supporting each other, and the music industry and the web designers. Well, it became web designers, the promoters and record label people and recording studios. We had one in our building, spaces to play. And the idea was you could get up in the morning, live there, get up in the morning, go and have some breakfast somewhere, go to work, go somewhere at lunchtime, talk to people, which is kind of what happened. Then go back to work, and then the evening maybe go out to a club or a bar or something or other, or just go home. But you didn't need to leave the area. You didn't need a car. Or maybe you had a bike. So it's kind of a 24-hour city.
It's really interesting to see how, as you say, you were basically regenerating the area without kind of realizing that's what you were doing. And it is a success. I mean, I want to know now what your opinion is of the Northern Quarter, but that aside, it's a desirable area of Manchester that people come to and enjoy spending time in. What are your thoughts on that now, knowing from the beginnings? Has it lost its kind of originality? Has it what's your viewpoint of it now?
I do want to tell the bucket story, but
I mean, share or
I'll tell you the bucket story and then remind me that is just partly to do with the artwork. So I mean, to me, what we've just talked about is placemaking, but coming from the grassroots, coming from the streets, rather have something imposed, and it was going to be a very gradual thing. And we went through recessions, and I actually think Manchester is majestic best, and in a funny kind of way in recessions, and things don't happen as fast, so there was time for things to slowly take place. But now it's just boom, 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 without any, I don't know, care or organic growth. But the buckets. One of the artists said, Liam, he did a lot of artworks, and once he made this fountain outside the craft centre of these galvanised buckets, and it kind of dripped down. Don't you ever seen George Best pouring champagne? They don't even know who George Best is, do they? But anyway. You might not either, but anyway, so everybody said this will get trashed, this will just get smashed up in the first day, and Lee was determined to do it, and he built this beautiful thing, and it was gorgeous and flowing water, and it was the homeless people and the smackheads and the winos all sat around it. It was their place. They made it their place. So they kind of owned it. And if anybody even chucked a crisp packet in it, they get really annoyed and say, get that out. And they'd sit there because the noise was calming and everything. It was just this thing about creating place that people care about. And, it's the eyes on the street, it's the security, it's people self-policing and stuff. So, it kind of worked. I mean, I suppose, well, we all got burnt out, and I had a bit of a breakdown and went off with a dog and a motorbike and a sidecar, and renewing my architectural vows. And we didn't make any money out of it. We had staff, but we were paying the staff more than we paid ourselves and stuff. So and it was kind of thing. It felt a bit like, oh, thanks for doing all that. We'll take it off you now, and we'll run it. So the city council sold off the car park site and built a great big building in front of the Mackie Mayor building, which was a stupid thing to do. They built a square in the wrong place. All sorts of crap went on. And I got really depressed, and I didn't even go back into it for quite a while. but then I started seeing things in the Guardian, you know, the little book that you had in the Guardian saying the Northern Quarter, the Northern Quarter, the Northern Quarter. I think, well, maybe it works. Maybe we did it. Maybe we did it. You know. But I remember Liam saying there was loads of people involved as well. All you lovely people who involved, Sarah and Wendy and everybody. You know, God bless you all. But the Arts Council built a building there, and Liam said, "That's it. It's all over." You know, it's been commodified and corporatized, and it's changed. And to a certain extent, that was true. And I actually went to some Northern Quarter meetings, which they still had way after it, because I was saying I was supposed to be writing the history about it down, and I've never done it. And they were saying. So we used to have these great meetings, and everybody had fun. We had a laugh, and you know, we all got drunk and all the rest of it. And I said, we were. I mean, I don't know, a lot of us weren't, but you know, it was more like old hippies. Not old hippies. We were young at the time, but anyway. And music was our thing. But anyway, but then I went to one of these meetings, and it was like, you know, what's going on here? It's kind of like. There's all these hipsters, for want of a better word, and a lot of these independent bars you think are independent bars, and actually they're not. They're owned by a few people, so they all it's basically like actually stealth bombing chain bars coming in. So it's you know, I mean, at the time we were making jobs, and it worked fantastic. That worked fantastically, and the Northern Quarter is a bit Jekyll and Hyde-ish. I think in the day. It's different. It's people who work and are in the offices above and in the bars and stuff. And then at night, again, a victim of its own success. People just come and hen nights, stag nights, kind of thing. So I think there's two different things. So I'm really pleased that it's created jobs. I actually think we've got different problems now. You know, we can't even feed our kids in the cities. We can't even house people. We've got climate change. So I do kind of think it needs a bit of a kick up the arse. But it kind of, you know. Sorry for swearing a bit. Shit happens, regeneration happens. You have to kind of deal with it. I mean, the thing that I was a bit sad about that in a way the idea is it spread up into North Manchester and Ancoats, and it was a stepping stone for kids and disenfranchised people back into the city. It was like a virtual university almost, not visual, virtual, but you know, you could learn. We did one building we did was a Manchester College of Technology's access to music building. We have recording studios in there, performance spaces, they had suites for learning on. It was access for kids. But then the city council got into bed with all the, you know, overseas developers and billionaires and millionaires and just imposed Ancoats, which is great because I never thought when we were in Ancoats, when we were there, we used to go around in all the buildings that were empty, used to nick things and make. In fact, most of the furniture in my flat is from reclaimed from warehouses. And you know, the buildings were all setting on fire, and I recently went to Ancoats.
It's like a different place entirely, isn't it?
Shameless people were outside in the cutting room square with the lycra shorts on, with weights and things, with some Mr. Motivator with a ghetto blaster. So all these people in plain daylight in lycra and tight, you know what I mean? I was just thinking, oh my God, you know what? You know, the only people there were dogs running around and heroin addicts. You know, now he's got this kind of thing. So it's totally weird. I mean, I'm so glad that these old buildings have been reused. It's brilliant. You know, it's very ecologically sound. So it's bittersweet. You know, double-edged.
Bittersweet.
Nice kind of thing. But you know, I do worry about our cities when we can't home people. My thing is back to basics. The only thing that really matters now is housing people, feeding people, and now it's heating and eating, and also reducing carbon emissions. That is everything else to me. It's important, and you can do things with art and culture and regeneration. So a lot of the projects we're doing is working with people like Manchester Urban Diggers, who are brilliant in Platt Fields. They've taken over this space and they've made it into amazing business. So they're kind of growing all this food. They do events. They have, you know, kids come in. They have kids parties. There's a potter's wheel there. There's volunteers. I mean, to me, fund all the volunteers in the world, you know, all the people who are working with all the homeless charities, they should be paid a proper wage and, you know, coming from that. But as I said about businesses, they're not volunteers anymore. The people who have run it are actually, because what happens is you burn out and you can't do any more. So they've actually made it into a business now. So they have those who are NHS people who've got mental health problems or elderly people, and it's this social prescribing, it's coming together and it's growing and it's eating. But they actually now manage to pay them, and they sell food to, you know, restaurants.
Yeah.
There was the story of a Kurdish family came along and they saw this plant, this vegetable that they'd planted and didn't really know what it was. It says, that's our staple vegetable. They said, oh, right. He said, yeah, can we have it? Yeah. And then now they grow loads of this vegetable, forgot what it is, and they sell it to all the Kurdish restaurants that are starting to go.
Wow.
And, you know, it's just kind of weird things like that. And that you know, they're expanding. And then the other people we work with is like, Save Withington Swimming Baths is a community asset transfer. Victoria Swimming Baths is a long story about regeneration. We do a lot of work with all the homeless kind of charities. I mean, one we're looking at is one of the projects is Extinction Rebellion on Rybank Fields, which is an MMU owned piece of land. We're getting into trouble.
That's very close to my heart. That your involvement with these different community groups, what is your involvement? You know, how do you help them? How do you support them? What's your role in working with these different groups?
Well, all the projects are set with the students work around them, and then they have there's one where you have a few weeks where the students go and build a model. They're trying to save the Hume Hippodrome, which is where Nina Simone played, and the Beatles. All you people in Liverpool. Am I talking to the whole of England?
To the world, Dominic, to the world.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, they go and I mean, some of them are now helping building a growing space in Martin's Cross Nursery, which is in Hume. Some of them are helping looking at how they might heat the Nyamos Centre, which is a group of anarcho artists have taken over, musicians have taken over this building, but you know, they're having trouble running it. Some are working on Hume community gardens, designing some play schemes and planting schemes. Not enough, basically. I mean, I've done work for FC United as well, and things like that, which is, you know, which is a football team that's set up in opposition to the corporate commodification of Manchester United, and ridiculous, you know, football has been paid. Do they get £500,000 a week or something? You know, stuff. And working with a lot of the food banks, and you know, my thing is about Manchester and Liverpool and you know, and Bristol. They're very much migrant cities and multicultural cities, and to me, I've been doing a lot of work in Hume and Moss Side, partly because got family legions there, but partly because black music came out of there, which kind of changed my life and changed the Reno Club, who Whitworth Art Gallery have done something with them, and we're doing something with Whitworth Art Gallery and documenting the history of the kind of black music and culture coming out. And we've done things about a black map of Manchester, and there's a Pan-African conference, which is where all the people from African countries came to kind of look at decolonization, and there was lots of work with kind of the Abbey Tap House, which is kind of a local pub. So my thing is that these people are just so, you know, I'll start crying if I talk about it too much, but you know, these people who do all this work are just unbelievable, you know, working in the food banks and stuff, you know, and that is, to me, is about placemaking. If you can fund that and make that work, rather than having these things imposed on us, and it actually comes from people and it becomes their lives. And again, it's about making the streets ours, you know, and little things, lots of little things, and lots of communities coming together. And, you know, looking at the things that are really important. A lot of these projects are about planting, and a lot is about rewilding and biodiversity. And, you know, God knows we need that, and the parks and that kind of stuff. So I know we need stuff going on in the city, but I just question how it all works. You know, I don't think that people have enough say in it. You know, we don't get enough say. We have things imposed on us. But as John Lennon said to all people, he says, the world's run by maniacs doing maniacal things, and it's true, you know, and it's why is it? You know, it's like I heard somebody say, communism, nice idea, shame nobody's tried it properly. You know, it comes back to mad people running the world, dictators. So yeah, so you know, they're the kind of people I mix with at the moment, rather than it used to be structural engineers or quantity surveyors, or, you know, that kind of thing as an architect. What else? Yeah, so yeah, there's just some great things. It's amazing. We mapped all the good people, as we call it, in Hume and Moss Side, and there's hundreds, literally hundreds of charities and churches, food banks and arts groups. If they were properly funded, the communities would be so much better, and everybody would be so much better. And you know, basically they need to put loads of money into housing. You know, that is the only way. It's kind of social housing. You know, when I was young, it was something like, I don't know, something ridiculous, like 50% of people were in council houses or something ridiculous. You know? And it's years and years of austerity, not just now, but, you know, going back to bedroom universal credit, section 21, where you could evict people, selling off council houses, bedroom taxes. I can't remember the whole series of thing that made people homeless. And you know, you're only they're saying is you're only 2 wage packets from being homeless, or you know, if you split up in a relationship, you're out on the streets. And we're actually working with somebody called the Youth Code. So there's kids who have been in care, you know, had traumatic upbringings through no fault of their own. They've been in care. As soon as they're 18, they're out on the streets. You know, it's just completely crazy. So yeah, that's you know, I think that you can. That's how you make good places, if you can kind of invest in things that are real.
You're involved in so many different projects. Do you have one in particular that at the moment, or one in the past that you've been in, you know, a project you're really proud of? Or, I mean, there's so many that you've.
Well, my current ones, they're all of them. But no, the Buddhist Centre was one that I was really proud of, because I was out. I'd been working on Sundays, and this was before when they didn't have Sunday shopping. So I always used to take the dogs out, and it was just these nutty group of people wandering around, and they were pointing at buildings, and I was just wandering along and started chatting to them. Says, "Oh, we're Buddhists and we're looking for a building." I said, "All right, well, might be able to help you." So we found them a building, got them a good price on it, and then we found them a housing grant, an economic development grant, a building cleaning grant, an art grant. I think that might have been about it. And then so we so in a way you had to find the buildings, find the money, but they did all the work. It was just a labor of love. They loved it. I mean, the whole of the Northern Quarter Association thing was a, you know, labor of love. And then they had housing in there. They had the shrine room. They had a business for videos. They had aromatherapy rooms and counselling rooms. Then they had a little shop, and then they had a little cafe. It was just a fantastic mixed-use building. I mean, I was involved with Detroit, FC United, which was a real favourite thing that happened. Again, I'm kind of for the ragtag bags of nutters who come together and do things, and they were a ragtag bag of nutters, and they do lots of community projects, and they've had some. People always fall out in communities. That's what I felt. People always start, you know, politics come into it. So there's always been a bit of that. But my favourite day ever, managed to get Detroit FC United to go over to Detroit and play Detroit City FC, who were a football team who came from a load of little football teams, grassroots football team, to make one team, and they were restoring this abandoned stadium. And I don't know how it happened, but FC United went over to play on their inaugural game, and it was the best day of my life. And then in the evening, it was the Movement Festival, which is the techno festival, and I went dancing to Kevin Saunderson's son was playing, and even my daughter says to me now, "Daddy, why can't you be happy like you were in Detroit?"
Wow, what?
So yeah, I mean,
experience. So tell me about Detroit then. What's your connection with Detroit?
So a bit of a petrol head, but music, everything coming out of Detroit, you know, from punk to glam rock, you know, house, techno, Northern Soul. I don't know if you know about Northern Soul, which was when kids went over to Detroit, bringing all these rare records back. And so it's this whole thing about music from all genres. Even, you know, Madonna came from Detroit and played at the Hacienda, her first playing in England. And then all the techno DJs kept coming to Detroit, and New Order went over there, and they all met and they all loved each other. But it's just a similar city, a post-industrial city. It had the hearts ripped out of it. I mean, a bit like New York as well. And again, kind of out of New York, out of abandoned warehouses, came high energy gay music, gay clubs and gay parties, and then you got rap coming and hip hop coming out of it. Partly because there's abandoned buildings, a bit like in the Northern Quarter, a bit like in Manchester used to be. There's zones of experimentation that were cheap. And in Manchester, there was a place called the Crescents in Hume, which was this no-go area, kind of brutalist squat city. And I lived in there. And stupidly, I paid rent, because most people didn't pay rent. It was the council that owned stuff. But Factory Records was Factory's first club was nearby. There was clubs in there. There was recording studios. It was kind of a mad anarchic place. But out of that place and poverty and misery came culture, which moved into the Northern Quarter, which went on to change the face of the city. And again, part of the regeneration. So out of all the crap and misery comes this culture, which changes things. And it happened in New York, and it's same in Detroit. You know, it's so sad. It's so sad though. It's so sad. You know, it's a sad place. When I went there 12 years ago, I was crying, because I couldn't believe that a place I'd held in such reverence was in this state. People wandering around, you could see in their eyes, their faces, there was just nothing left anymore. And that was racism as well. You know, a lot of that kind of stuff. And I always thought, and then I kept going back, and I always thought, well, actually, it's like an urban prairie, because everything's knocked down. There's pheasants, there's foxes, there's wildlife, there's trees, there's space. So people started doing things, and it's like a Dada city. It's like a city of Dada, mad artists just doing crazy stuff. Again, it was the underground culture that made it popular again. But now the same thing's happening. It's the city centre. It's people from New York coming in, buying stuff, investing. It's very much white in the city centre. And the rest of the area is still not getting the recognition that it deserves. So I was really hopeful that this was a future of cities. This could be the future of cities. You had space, it was free, you could build, you could talk to each other, you could create things, you could grow things. And to a certain extent, that is happening, and it's fantastic. But then there's all, you know, quite quickly, it's just so sad how things become about making money and commodifying. Until people, there's a conscious change, and actually billionaires thinking, actually, you know, this is crap. And I actually read an article about a woman billionaire who spent a year giving most of her money away. She said she's never had such a fantastic time in all her life, and she recommends it to all billionaires. You know, so, and, you know, all corporate businesses, you know, they should be taxed. If I'd been younger, I would have just packed everything in and bought a plot of land and started farming and driving motorbikes around.
I think it's good you stayed in Manchester. Manchester needs you.
Well, no, I'm nearly burnt out again, actually. But it wears you out, though. It wears you out, you know, worrying. But you've got to have fun. You've got to have fun, kids. You've just got to have fun. You've got to dance and escape your misery and your woes somehow. But, you know, to me, placemaking is about, I don't know, having energy to protest and do. I mean, part of the problem is people are so tired now, because they've all got, I mean, part of the problem is if you have better jobs, there's such crap jobs in the gig economy now that people haven't got the time or the energy or the money. You know, when I was young, your rent was 25% of what you owned, and now it's 70% or something stupid. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's you know, it's like climate change. It's that thing, everything needs changing, doesn't it? And in a way, you know, there's a bottom-up stuff, but until policy changes, like housing policy changes, I don't know, you know, but it needs everybody to come together. You know, I want kind of a march where all the community people in the world come together, and it kind of is happening, you know. There's things that are happening, and I'm hoping, you know, that the young people are realizing that, well, I have no choice, maybe, you know, that this is what they've got to do. They've got to, you know, because at the moment, people, the powers keep people at the bottom fighting against each other, whether it's, you know, economically or it's different religions, different races. They're happy when people are fighting or getting drunk, or, you know, there's stories of people allowing heroin to be in, so it keeps, so they're all fighting, and then at the top they can do whatever they want and just make more and more and more and more money. And it's, you know, it's I don't know how until people realize actually this is rubbish way of living, and we all need to kind of, you know, until it clicks with people that they've got to look at things differently and spread the money about. I think places aren't going to be as good as they should be.
So how do we get people that think in that way into those, you know, policy making positions, or those kind of decision making positions? You know, how do we get you know, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it?
I think it's, well, the problem is greed. I think, and there's, you know, there's the whole thing, talk about degrowth. We don't all need 3 cars. We don't all need that, you know. You just need some space and time. I mean, the closing question is, are you hopeful about the future, or what you're most excited about?
Yeah.
I'm more worried than anything else, but I'm hoping there'll be a slight sea of change, a conscious change of more compassion and care and love. And maybe that's idealistic, but there's all sorts of talks about not universal credit, but universal wages, where everybody gets a, you know, a wage, and either you can live off that and do things, or you can make more money if you want to. But the idea is that you have time, so everybody works a 4-day weeks, and the other times, instead of, I hate gyms, instead of going to the bloody gym, going on a machine that uses electricity to run and is made of loads of embodied carbon materials, of steel and plastic, and you're in a horrible room listening to horrible music and it stinks. Why can't you just go out and start helping some little old lady grow vegetables in the gardens and do some exercises like that? You know, sorry for all the people who go to gyms. Or maybe, you know, maybe the robots are coming. Maybe there's hope. Maybe they will do the stuff, and we'll have time to talk to each other and have time to build and do nice things. I mean, I think it's happening. You know, we've all got to get back to nature and all that. You know, it's important to understand that, you know, God is in the trees or whatever. You know, no, it's I quite like, you know. And is it Indians in the native Indians in America? Decisions they made was all about, you know, respecting nature, and they made decisions for the next 7 generations. You know, we make decisions about the next 5 years or 7 months or something, you know. Also, anyway, I don't know, it's a complex thing, isn't it? It's a complex thing. I don't know. I'm kind of working with this bloke who's doing a PhD on music and communities and how they work together, almost as a model of how community groups can come together. Because there is a thing about music and culture and people talking and working together, whether it is, you know, on different jobs and things, whether it is, as I said before, like promotion or websites or whatever. But it's kind of, it's the kind of thing, we've tried everything, you know, we've tried capitalism, communism, whatever, religion, and none of it's worked. Maybe it's music. Maybe it's music. Maybe that's somewhere to kind of end on. Or as a model as how people work together as a community of musicians. And, you know, in a way, you know, the Northern Soul community is a community that's still going, techno kind of musicians. I mean, house and raves was about love and communities and people, you know, coming together, and classical music about whatever, but culture and things. I mean, I know I've gone about, you know, it's housing, food, clothing and heating and things, but, you know, maybe we do need culture to bring us all together, and art to bring us together, but just doing nice things. Well, I mean, that's partly what the Northern Quarter was, but Tesco's managed to sneak their way into it. But the idea was, it's a place where you can eke a living, not necessarily making lots of money, but you're doing things that you like doing, that you believe in, and you're not working for the corporate man, and you're not stacking shelves in Tesco's for the rest of your lives, you know, that thing. and get rid of supermarkets. I hate supermarkets. I get overwhelmed by them. Mainly just think I've got a bit of ADHD and all sorts of stuff. And I go in them and I just can't deal with it, with the stuff and the choice.
So no, I'm the same.
Can't deal with them. So there's things like that, and then you get on to what's the high street about and things like that, which is another thing which probably not time to go into. But I mean, we're just talking about England. I mean, there's massive problems all over the world.
I think though the impact of this pandemic and still being in it, and the experience of lockdown and all of that, and I feel like it has made people reflect at least on how they're spending their time, and certainly the flexibility now that's kind of started to I know people are still pushing for a return to that 9 to 5 in office all time, but the conversation's now open, isn't it, to that flexible approach to working, and at least the conversation started in terms of how people are spending their time and where people, places and spaces, and the importance of that.
That's a good.
And feeling connected. Where's my nearest community?
It's I think that's really interesting. It's all this thing about walkable cities, so you don't have loads of cars passing kids' schools and pollution and all that. So so your community and your local, I mean, maybe, that's right. It's about, again, it's the streets are all ours. I mean, it's like little people coming together on the streets. And you're right, that kind of did happen. Well, I quite like people communicating through sticking things on the windows, or there's loads of people leaving, old toys that they don't use on walls and things. People just leaving things for people to kind of pick up and I suppose you're not getting in cars and I know it's not quite right, but the idea of petrol costing more money, maybe in a way it's in the long term, or it's not at the moment, because we depend on it so much for transport of goods. But maybe that's a good thing, or even not enough oil, or I don't know. People freezing to death, so it's a tricky one. But we kind of hope that maybe there's some legacy from that.
I hope so. And the whole thing of kind of helping each other out, or if someone's having to isolate and communities coming together to do the shopping, or get provisions for that person. And it's been a really interesting time to live through, and I wonder what the legacy will be. I hope we can hold on to some of those like really positive aspects that came out of it, or are coming out of it.
And it's talking like to people. I mean, again, it's the city centres. Often the population changes every 3 years, and it's all rental, and people make money. People don't actually form a community, which was what happened in the Northern Quarter. We had a community of people who lived, worked, and were happy there, kind of thing. So it's a bit of a. Well, here's hope for the future, you lot out there.
Here's hope for the future.
And again, what India was saying about, it's been a tough few years, and God bless you and whatever, and hope you're all right, because I really feel for you being in the middle of education at the moment. It's been really hard, really tough. And I get overwhelmed by computers, but I'm doing it on the now. But I feel like I'm a fucking robot, or I feel like I'm an android. I'm chained to the machine. The machine is controlling our lives, and in a way, if we get rid of that, and buying stuff, and you can do things. I mean, I don't actually have a mobile phone, so I don't even like my own phone, mainly because I've got a mad family who ring me up all the time, and I can't bear it.
So you are still hopeful then, Dominic? There are things you're hopeful for.
Yeah, the robots are coming and they're going to save my life.
I mean,
I don't know. No, I think I know a friend who spent a lot of time just going around the world, and I said, "Go on, what do you think about the people in the world?" And he said, 95% of the world are really good and lovely and really helpful. There's about 5% who are bastards. So, you know, it's, the people are good, I think, and again, that's a kind of an anarchist thing. The people are good as long as you're doing things that aren't upsetting or damaging other people, but you're allowed to do the things that you want to do, how you want to do them, and you're not, you know, I mean, yeah, there's the hope, because there's a whole thing, you know, about gender minorities and people changing and living, you know, you couldn't have done that 10 years ago.
No, it's true.
It's just, there is lots of improvement and lots of things that have happened, and hopefully, you know, women's rights are going to get, I know it's still bad, but, you know, and racism, things are, if you look at it, there is hope. There is hope. But it's, as I said, I think the people are good, but it's the policies that are bad and the people who run the countries that are bad.
Can I ask what advice you'd give your 17-year-old self?
Going back to kind of studying geology and geography, I kind of think now maybe, you know, I would have liked to have done more, I don't know what the word is, more community and more gardening, maybe, more gardening.
Yeah.
Actually, no, my real thing, I wish I'd gone and I'd worked in a motorbike shop and learned all about motorbikes and could repair and do up motorbikes is my real dream. And you know, it's kind of, it's you know, it's tough, but no, I'm glad I've done architecture, but it's yeah, no, really, I'd like to just drive motorbikes.
Well, I'm sure that's the next thing you could go into if you wanted, you know.
No, and actually, no, music as well. I would have, but I'm not very musical, and I'm not very good with engineering either. So maybe I should just stick what I've done, which is fine, you know, kind of thing. But you know, to all you lot, you know, you can go out and make a change, and I think, you know, that is the key thing. We need to change the way things are done. But it's so complex that it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. It's really difficult. But yeah, go out and make a change. What's the saying? Actually, it came from MC5, who were a mad Detroit kind of punk band. You're either part of the problem or part of the solution, something like that. So I don't know. But it's too difficult. It's too complicated. You know, I don't know anything.
Yeah, but small change has
do things. Yeah, lots of
small change has big impact, though, doesn't it? So
yeah, well, it can have massive impact. I mean, what's the phrase that came from the Peterloo massacre, when, you know, they just laid into all the kind of a protest. They laid into and killed loads of people in Manchester, and out of it, Byron wrote the Mask of Anarchy. Is that what it was? Where they are the few, we are the many. Yeah. And I think that is a really good thing to think. And it hasn't seemed to change. So yeah, they are the few, we are the many. So come on, all the good people, get together.
Yeah. Thank you, Dominic. Tell me, what was that the quote you were going to share before? Yeah, no,
it comes from, actually, it's Luke Unabomber from Electric Chair, the musicians and DJs. You might not know about them, but he was talking about the city being sanitized. And it says, it represents the move to homogenize, sanitized city, where they stamp all over the soul and creativity. They don't want ambiguity. They want a shiny, vacuous world. Creativity is dangerous because they don't control it. They want our cities to look the same, sell the same, and smell the same. The new world order is about the brand and control and no love. And it's talking about closure of a club. The closure of legends is part of this bulldozing. It's part of the old world they no longer want. But Luke Unabomber is optimistic about the future. There will always be hope and creativity and change. It's in the cracks of the pavement, and even if for a period things seem to disappear, they will always return, and the flowers will grow again from the cracks. This city was built on an independent maverick spirit. They will never get rid of that. So I think that's, I know you mentioned about, what did you mention about at the beginning? Oh, rebranding. This idea of rebranding, and I've got this thing about, we had Manchester, Gunchester, and now it's a danger of Blandchester and Brandchester. So you know, it's this thing of, but you know, it comes from people owning everything. We're all owned by Google or Facebook or whatever. That so yeah, I think, you know, this spirit. I mean, again, Manchester, very much the history has been a radical city, you know, about suffragette movement, even the vegetarian movement and the Royal Society's protection. Birds came from here, and trade union movements and uprisings and things like that. But yeah, it's fighting the corporate and the kind of, you know, the I know I said it's about food and thing, but creativity is really important, and you can make a change through that. I don't know, I want to end on a good thing that goes like, you just say blah 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 blah.
No,
blah.
I think that's it, isn't it?
That's it.
Creativity.
I don't know. The end is, just do something and see what happens. You never know, do you? But I don't know. I don't know where to end this.
I think that's great.
Do it for us.
And I really like the quote you shared there. I think that kind of captures everything we've been talking about in the last hour or so.
Good. Right. Great.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure hearing
from
you, Dominic, talking to you.
Well, likewise, Indy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just think you're involved in so many great things.
No,
I'm really keen to get involved as well if I can. And I love the references to the places I know as well, being a Mancunian. So yeah, it was really nice to hear about the different places you were referring to.
Okay.
With
all right.
Fields and Hume and stuff. But thank you. Thanks for your time.
Peace and love. Take care.
And love.
Look after yourselves.